Welcome back, MTN Nets podcast. Another Brooklyn Nets victory. They just keep on coming. I don't know how, but they keep winning these games. I guess because of great defense, let's be honest. But when I talked to you guys last time over the break, I felt pretty good about the Nets' chances of sticking with the sixth worst record in the NBA, and that would still give them like an 8% chance at the first overall pick. As I talk to you guys now, what is this, 2 games out of the break? Like not even that long ago. The Nets, at this point, are probably going to make the play-in. I just have to accept that. Now, do I think they'll make the actual playoffs? No, I think they'll probably lose to the Hawks or something in the play-in tournament. But this team is now a half game out of the 10th seed, which, of course, that's like the final play-in spot. They would have to win 2 games to make the playoffs. I think we all know the rules by now, or the format. But yeah, this is not looking good. If you're a fan of the Nets tanking, like me, which is what I wanted, it's probably not going to happen. This Nets team, I believe, has now won 7 of their past 9 games. Yeah, 7 of their past 9. It started with that win on January 29th at Charlotte. They had the back-to-back Houston wins, beat Miami, beat Charlotte again, beat the Sixers the day before the break, which is when Philly had like nobody playing. And in this game, I thought they were going to win Philly. I thought they were going to pull this one out. The Nets had a solid 10 to 20 point lead the entire game, basically. But the Sixers came back. They had tremendous defense, like the final 6 or 7 minutes of this game. They really turned up their defensive intensity. They kept Joel Embiid on the bench, which actually helped them because they were able to switch 1 through 5, and they were doing a good job at it. I remember at one point, the Nets had 5 turnovers in 7 possessions. Like, the Nets couldn't even get shots up. It was that bad. So the Sixers were playing great defense, but the Nets made enough plays at the end of this game to pull it out. One of those was when the Nets were down 3. Cam Johnson, who of course the Nets kept past the trade deadline, which I don't agree with, he made a clutch 3 from the corner, which always makes me crack up because Cam Johnson, his first year and a half here, could not make a clutch 3 to save his life. Now when we want to lose, or when most of us want to lose, he wants to make them, so that part's annoying. Tyrese Maxey made that big 3-point shot from the corner to tie the game at 103. Nets held for the final shot. They had a Keon Johnson 3-pointer left wing. He made one there not too long ago. I'm thinking, oh, here we go. Keon Johnson game-winning 3. And it actually rimmed out, felt like we were going to overtime, and Nic Claxton right over Paul George, who was like probably a couple inches from getting his hand on that ball. Nic Claxton, fading away, goes and makes this like all in one motion. He catches the ball in the air, makes like a little 6-7 foot shot, jump shot form, and the Nets win this game by 2. It was just crazy. Like Claxton, it was weird. It hit the front rim, hit the backboard, went in. So it wasn't like the best looking shot, but it got the job done. Claxton said that's the first game winner of his life. That's, good for him, of course. And it was actually the Nets' first buzzer beater since Kyrie back in 2022 in December against the Raptors in Toronto. I think we all remember that game during the 18-2 stretch the Nets had that year. There's a lot of guys on this team playing well. I mean, like, if you're a Nets fan, I'm trying to look at this positively. I know some of you are probably watching this saying, oh, this guy's miserable. His favorite team is winning, and he doesn't like it. I mean, overall, they're 21-35, and they're going to probably get bounced in the play-in once again. So, like, I don't see the point in winning right now. I'd rather try and get Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey, one of those guys, or somebody else, Edgecombe, Harper, any of those 4 I'm pretty content with. But at this point, it seems pretty far-fetched. If the Nets were to, somehow get in the actual playoffs, they'd be picking 15th overall if they get swept by the Celtics, or not Celtics, the Cavaliers. So if the Nets were to make the playoffs and lose in the first round, which barring Mitchell, Mobley, Jared Allen, and probably a couple other guys getting injured, the Nets would get bounced in the first round, and they would be picking 15th overall. So, of course, I want to be in the lottery, but I also want a higher chance at picking first overall. So if the Nets were to hypothetically drop to, let's say, I think they'll drop to 8th at some point. It seems like Chicago is kind of in a free fall right now. No more Zach LaVine. They're 2-8 in their past 10 games. It might be even worse over a longer stretch of games, but they've lost 6 in a row. Chicago right now is half a game above Brooklyn. If the Nets were to drop to Chicago's place in the tankathon standings, you're dropping from a 32% chance at a top 4 pick to a 26% chance at a top 4 pick. So a 6% drop off. You drop off a percentage and a half in chances to get the first overall pick. So going from 7 to 8, it has its negatives. Like, I don't want to fall any lower in these tankathon standings, but I think for me, the sad reality is this Nets team is probably going to make the play-in once again. I think it's going to happen. I don't want to get worked up over wins anymore. I thought I was like mentally better at handling Nets wins now. Like, I really thought during the All-Star break, I kind of told myself, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. Like, it's not worth getting so pissed off over these meaningless wins. Just let the season play out. But in this game, because they were tied with the Sixers with, for having the same record. So this was a big game in terms of tanking. And the Sixers played all their main guys. Of course, no Jared McCain. That's still a big loss for them. But they had Embiid, who at one point in the third quarter was looking really good. Outside of that, not so much. He really did not play at all in the fourth quarter. And they had Paul George, who actually at some points had some flashes of being like the good Paul George. He had some really tough-looking layups. And then Maxey, who overall played well, but they still lost the game. So it's an embarrassing loss for Philly, who I think at this point, it's in their best interest to kind of tank the rest of the year. I mean, Paul George and Maxey are healthy. You can easily shut down Embiid and nobody would even bat an eye. I think that's very reasonable. So I don't really know if the Sixers will end this season with a better record than the Nets. I'm not convinced of that. So I just think the Sixers suck. I don't know what it is. I'm not like watching the Sixers very closely every game. If they had played intense defense all game like they did in the fourth quarter, the Sixers win this game by 15 to 20 points, right? So I mean, if they just put in more effort, they win the game. Now, is it sustainable to play intense defense for over 4 quarters in the NBA? Probably not. But even if they played that in the whole second half, the Sixers probably still win this game rather comfortably by 5 to 10 points or so. Looking at the Nets box score in this game, we got a good game out of Nic Claxton, a very good game. 7 of 11, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 blocks. He almost had 6. There was that one with Kelly Oubre where it was a little 50-50. They called the goaltend, so it is what it is. But Claxton, ever since he's worn that mask, he's been unbelievable. So I think the Nic Claxton mask thing might stay. I mean, he probably doesn't need it anymore. But Claxton over the past 2 or 3 weeks has been a different looking player. And it's coincided with him wearing that black mask. So he might just roll with that. I don't see why not. If I was him, I'd probably keep that up. Keon Johnson has actually been looking pretty good lately. I want to dive into him a bit. He's still 22 years old. He turns 23 in about a couple weeks here. But Keon Johnson's a guy that I kind of like. I was really kind of pulling for him last year. I wanted him to play more. And he's really kind of coming out of his shell in a good way. Like, he's been looking very good. He's been starting a lot of games this year, as we know. Once I think Dennis Schroeder left, he was pretty much implemented in the starting lineup, and he's been there ever since. But even recently, against like the Wizards a couple weeks ago, he had that 25-point game, had a 22-point game before that. And the game is like slowing down for him. There's a lot of times where like this guy has like a 46-inch vertical. So he now knows how to just hang in the air and make those tough layups. He does that a lot now, where he'll just get to his spot on the block and just out jump the guy trying to block his shot and just, angle it correctly off the backboard. And he's getting good at that. Even the outside shot, it's not perfect, but I guess it's looking a bit better. I mean, his percentages are still pretty awful for this month, at least over the last like 7 or 8 games, but I don't know. His shooting touch looks a bit better. He just looks like a better player. So I think Keon Johnson, I'm not expecting him to be like a star in this league, but can he be a valuable role player? I mean, maybe. I think his vertical is just unbelievable. He is 6'5". If that jump shot ever comes around, which maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but if that ever comes around, I mean, this guy has a chance to be a pretty good rotation player. And honestly, I did not really see that for him in the beginning of the year because he looked terrible at the beginning of the year. So Keon Johnson, once again, still 22, almost 23. He's been looking really good. So we'll see if he's able to finish off the year strong. We'll see if his role is diminished once Cam Thomas and even D'Angelo Russell come back. I'm sure he'll lose some minutes to those guys. Cam Johnson went 7 of 17, 1 of 9 from 3. Did make all 8 free throw attempts. 3 steals, 4 rebounds, 23 points. As I said earlier, I wish he wasn't on this team, but it is what it is. Killian Hayes, his second game as a Brooklyn Net, so of course they brought him up from the G League. That was good to see. They bought out Bojan Bogdanovic, who needed a second surgery, I saw, so that sucks for him, but hopefully Bojan's back next year for maybe a final run at things in the NBA. Killian Hayes, only 3 points, had that and one early in the game. Didn't see much of him in the second half, but, he's Killian Hayes. I haven't been too impressed. Did have 6 assists and 4 rebounds, so we'll take that. But overall, I've not been too impressed yet, so we'll see what happens the remaining 20 or so games. Trendon Watford, he needs the spotlight because he was great in the fourth quarter. Trendon Watford was the catalyst of this team in the fourth quarter. It seemed like every time he got downhill, good things were happening. He does like that Euro step, that very slow Euro step, that thing that Stephon Castle does now where it's kind of like a deceleration Euro step type thing. Puts his shoulder into guys, does the spin move. Like Trendon Watford was getting to his spots the entire fourth quarter, and ever since he's came back, he's been really good. Like the Nets win a lot of games when Trendon Watford plays, and I've always liked Watford. I was very happy when the Nets brought him back this summer. I really do think like there's something there with Trendon Watford. He's a big guy, muscular, strong, can move guys out of the way. He can handle the ball, which is great. You know, you can run pick and roll with him as the ball handler. You can run pick and roll with him rolling to the basket. He's a pretty good shooter for the most part. So, you know, he's not going to ever shoot like 40-something% from 3, but enough where you can't completely write him off and not guard him at all once he's on the perimeter. So I think Trendon Watford, there is something there. He had 6 assists tonight, and without him, they lose this game, 100%. So having Trendon Watford back, bad for the pro tankers, but still, for the Nets trying to win, having Trendon Watford back is huge. Jalen Wilson, efficient game, 2 of 3 from 3. Day'Ron Sharpe, efficient game, 5 of 6, 7 rebounds, 2 steals. Did have 4 fouls, almost had a 5th foul, but the Nets challenged one of the calls and they reversed it, so they took away a foul call on Day'Ron Sharpe. Still too many fouls, though. Not liking what I'm seeing there from a fouling standpoint from Day'Ron, but I feel like that's what he is at this point. Day'Ron, he's now 4 years, I think, in the NBA. So if he's still having this many foul issues, I don't know if it's ever going to be resolved, but his upside as a rebounder is still so good. Of course, for the Nets, as I mentioned before, there is no Cam Thomas still. He is playing 5-on-5. I saw that update like maybe 3-4 days ago. So Cam Thomas, he'll be back at some point, maybe early March or something like that. So he's going to be back for the final maybe 20 games, whatever it's going to be. And I think Cam Thomas is this team's best player. So he's going to help this team win games. I know he may not help a lot defensively, but I think he's an underrated defender. I think some people look at Cam Thomas as the worst defender in the NBA. I don't think he's that bad. Like off ball, sure, I get it. He does get lost off ball sometimes, but I think Cam Thomas's on ball defense is not that bad. And speaking of that, I saw a lot of times where the Sixers were hunting Cam Johnson on defense today with Maxey, especially late in the game, and that was working out for them. So Cam Johnson, who even him and Mikal Bridges, going back to Bridges, which, man, he has not looked great lately for the Knicks, and I think a lot of Knicks fans are accepting that that was a bad trade for them, as we knew from the second it happened. I still love that night that trade happened, and a lot of Knicks fans were telling Nets fans to cope, as if we were, like, mad about it. Like, that was a great trade for the Nets. You do that every single time. So anyway, Cam Johnson, and as I said, Mikal Bridges, I thought those guys would be better defenders when they came here, but they have not been good. Like, when Mikal was here for a year and a half, his defense was very underwhelming. I thought maybe it's because he's asked to do more offensively, but even now when he's on the Knicks and Brunson's the main guy handling the ball, you're still seeing Mikal Bridges not being the defender he was really hyped up to be in Phoenix. Point I was getting to was Cam Thomas, not the worst defender. I think obviously D'Angelo Russell, you can make a case D'Angelo's the worst defender in the NBA, but he still does enough for this team offensively and gets other guys involved, where D'Angelo Russell is still a positive for this Nets team. And I thought coming in tonight, the Sixers were, I think, 10.5-point favorites. The Nets were starting Killian Hayes at point guard. Killian Hayes, starting point guard. 10.5-point dogs. I'm thinking, all right, the Sixers are going to win this game, right? There's no way they blow this. And of course they do. So you have to give credit to the Nets, who have played, I think, the best defense in the NBA over the past month and, some change. Like, sure, maybe some of that's because they've played some awful opponents like Washington. They play Washington again Monday, so I'm sure they'll hold them to 85 points. But they played Washington. They've played Charlotte. They played the Sixers, who were not playing Maxey and Embiid that one game before the break. They were playing Charlotte again, Sacramento, So not some great opponents in there. But nonetheless, I mean, this has been a really impressive defensive stretch by the Nets. It's really hard to believe that this team went 2-15 over a 17-game span, but I think when you include the fact that some guys like Watford, for instance, and even I think Day'Ron missed some time, of course Cam Thomas was out, when you consider all those things, it's like, all right, yeah, that kind of makes sense that they lost so many games. But I figured tonight, with no real main ball handler, It was Killian Hayes and Trendon Watford. I like Watford. Hayes, I don't know. He's probably not that good. But I figured that the Nets would have a lot of issues getting their offense going tonight, and the Sixers had no interest playing defense the first, 3 quarters of the game, or even a little over 3 quarters of the game. So as I said, like once the Sixers clamped down, they were doing a great job holding the Nets to a lot of turnovers and not having good offensive possessions. But the Nets made just enough plays. Like they scored 22 points in the fourth quarter, Brooklyn. It's not good. The Sixers only had 27. Like the Sixers had under 27 points in 3 out of 4 quarters. The Sixers' highest scoring quarter was 30 in the first quarter. So like the Nets defense, once again, even in this game where the Sixers have their full team basically, not McCain, not Kyle Lowry, who I don't care about Lowry at this point, but like, yeah, they held a team that should be good offensively to 103 points. It's impressive. So having Jordi Fernandez, I mean, that's a big takeaway this year, is having Jordi Fernandez, because I did hear this stat recently on the Russillo podcast. I forget who the guest he had on was, but the guest said that only 2 teams of the past 25 NBA champions, only 2 of them were not top 10 in regular season defense. And I really do think once Jordi Fernandez gets his guys, like actually gets star players, and the Nets are actually trying to win games for a full season, the Nets more times than not, with Jordi Fernandez as head coach, will have a top 10 defense because he is coaching the hell out of these guys. Maybe it's because these guys are hungry and they're playing for contracts and playing for their NBA lives. Like if, let's say hypothetically, Jordi was here 3-4 years ago and he had the big 3 in that team. Are they top 10 in defense? It's tough to gauge if it's Jordi Fernandez, which I'm sure part of it is, or if it's because all these guys basically, besides like Nic Claxton and Cam Johnson, are playing for contracts and playing to stay in the NBA. You look at Zaire Williams, you look at Keon Johnson, Killian Hayes, Trendon Watford, Jalen Wilson, Daron Sharp, Tyrese Martin, Reese Beekman, all these guys. That's 8 guys right there who are playing for their NBA lives. So it makes sense as to why they're trying so hard on defense, and I'm sure part of that is Jordi Fernandez. So I'm curious, and hopefully we see this soon. Maybe not too soon. I'm not too much of a fan of trading everything for Giannis, but hopefully we'll see one day what the Nets look like defensively with Jordi Fernandez as head coach when he has star talent. So I don't think the Nets are going the long rebuild route, which is what I wanted. I really do think they're going to kind of just do the same shit they always do, which is like trade a ton of picks for a already established all-star. I just said Giannis's name. His name's out there. It seems like Giannis and the Bucks might be heading for a divorce this offseason. I guess it depends how they finish out this year, but with like Bobby Portis out for 25 games now, and that team's just not that good in general. I don't feel great about that team getting past the second round. I just don't really see it. And I'm sure there's other names. Like the name that I would trade a lot for is Anthony Edwards. Like that's a guy who I think is like 23, 24. I love Ant. I love Ant's personality. Like that is a dog. I love players like that. And obviously he's a great player. He has a lot of upside. Could be a bit more efficient, but still, like if the Nets traded like 7 or 8 first round picks for Anthony Edwards, I would not care. I'm fine with that. He's like so young that you can build with him for a decade. Right? So, like, that would make sense. Trading for Giannis at 30 years old now, he's had 2 or 3 calf strains in the past 2 years. Or actually, no, year, right? Yeah, because he had that calf strain, the non-contact one, at the end of last year. So it's been like 2 or 3 calf strains in a year. Calf strains can, of course, lead to Achilles injuries. We saw that with KD and the Warriors. Actually, no, KD might have been a turned ankle. I forget. But I still think that is possible. Like, when you're overcompensating, things like Achilles injuries can happen. So, like, trading for Giannis at that point, it's just, if you can get Giannis for a discount, okay. But I'm not making a James Harden level trade. I'm not giving up 7 first-round picks and swaps for Giannis. I don't want that. If the price is for some reason very low for Giannis and it only takes like maybe 3 or 4 first-round picks, all right, like maybe. But then you have to worry about who's the co-star, because it can't just be Giannis and then Cameron Johnson and Cam Thomas as the next best players. No offense to those guys, but you can't have that. I think Cam Johnson's a 4 on the championship team. You can't ask him to be a 2. I think Cam Thomas can be a 3. You're asking him to be a 2. Like, you need somebody else. So if you're getting Giannis, there has to be another contingency plan or just a plan B to bring in a co-star. It can't just be, hey, we got Giannis. All is good. All is good and well. No, you have to do something else. So I think that will just about do it. It's been a frustrating year. I just said on Twitter before, maybe I'm a jackass for saying this, and maybe it was just a spur of the moment type of thing, but this season has been more frustrating than the whole COVID mandate, vaccine mandate season with the Kyrie sitting in the crowd thing. Like it's honestly been more frustrating than that. Like I have just not had fun this year. it looked like the Nets were in such a good position to get a top 5 pick. They were 14-33 at the end of January. It's almost a month later and they're 21-35. If they just stayed on that course, I mean, man, they could have really been in position to get one of those top 4 picks, which is all I wanted this year. And now we're staring at a potential play-in spot. The Bulls just lost tonight to the Suns. It's like everything that could go wrong this year seems to be going wrong. And I just have a fear that we're going to end up being like the Atlanta Hawks or the Chicago Bulls and just be a middling team. Now, I do think the Nets are an attractive destination because of Jordi Fernandez, because of the area, the market, Brooklyn. So they tend to get stars, but a lot of the times the Nets get stars, it's guys past their prime. Think about the Celtics trade. I mean, Kevin Durant was 31 when we got him and injured. I mean, you know, I just want to get guys in here that are younger. I want guys that are entering their prime, not leaving their prime. That's why the whole, I know it's an extreme example, but the whole Luka trade made no sense because like Anthony Davis was 31, 32, and probably at the tail end of his prime. Like if AD was 26, then yeah, that trade would not be looked at nearly as bad as it was. But I think the route this team's going right now, I'm just mentally preparing for 7 first-round picks and players for Giannis. I just think that's might be how it plays out. I don't like it, but they're already messing up the tank. So unless the Nets unless they get some dumb luck in the lottery, which maybe they do, then I think that they're going to go the superstar route. And I don't think I would do it unless you're getting a guy who's very young. If you can get Anthony Edwards once again, if he forces his way out somehow, then yeah, all right, do that. So there's always a chance that the Nets finish, you know, with the 9th worst pick and they have a 4% chance at the first overall pick, and maybe somehow that 4% chance comes to fruition and they get the first overall pick, and we're all looking back on this and laughing at it. But right now, the way they have gone about this season, the way they're trying to tank, it's not working out. I was really hoping that this season and next season, because next draft is great too, I was really hoping that these would be 20-win seasons and they would get top 5 picks in both drafts, and we can really get some homegrown superstars. That was the hope. But now, as they win these games, and apparently Jordi Fernandez is too good, they're playing too hard. Some guys like Trendon Watford are just playing well above the level they were supposed to. And because of all that, they're probably going to end this season with like 30 wins. And it's just, that's not what you want. You want to have below 20 in this situation. So I can't be mad at the guys for winning. I'm happy for the players. But the way Sean Marks went about this season is just so stupid. The trade for D'Angelo Russell. You did the right thing. You got rid of Schroeder early. You got rid of DFS pretty early. They were on the right track. As I said, they were like 14-33. Things were looking great. You get D'Angelo Russell back. You don't trade Cam Johnson. It's like everything Marks was doing the first couple months of this year made a lot of sense. And then getting D'Angelo Russell back, which they had to match the salaries. Like at that point, just buy out Russell. You don't need to keep him. So that part annoyed me. And then it's just like you could have traded Cam Johnson. Like there were definitely offers out there to trade Cam Johnson. Marks was being too stingy, and he's still here. And he had 22 points tonight. And then Cam Johnson had that quote that fans that root for losses are not real fans. And I'm sitting here like, fuck you, man. Like, are you serious? You've been here for 2 minutes. A lot of us have been Nets fans for years, whether you were in Jersey or whether you became a Nets fan when they moved to Brooklyn. Like, I've been a Nets fan since like the mid 2000s. And for this freaking guy to be like, oh, you're not a real fan. Like, go F yourself, Cam Johnson. Like, get out of here. So that did not sit right with me. I'm not a big fan of the guy. I'm really not. Like, yeah, I'm sorry that I want my team to get a potential superstar, homegrown superstar from the draft. And losing is the best way to ensure that. I'm sorry that that's what I want. I'm sorry that being 21-34, whatever the hell they are, 20-35, I'm sorry that does not excite me, Mr. Cam Johnson. All right, like get over yourself. The person I'm mad at is Sean Marks, clearly, because even Joe Tsai, I'm sure Joe Tsai has a lot of his fingerprints on this as well. Those are the guys you ask to tank. It's not the players, but to throw out some stupid comment like that you're not a real fan, it's like, does not sit right with me. So anyway, yeah, frustrating night. It's just typical Nets, I guess. It just is what it is. I'm sure next time I talk to you guys, the Nets will be picking, well, not picking, but they'll be with the 8th worst record in the NBA and continue to hurt their chances of getting a top 5 pick. So we'll see. Upcoming, it's at the Wizards. That's probably a win. Home versus OKC, hopefully a loss. Home versus Portland, which I think Portland can beat the Nets. I don't see why not. They've looked good. I know Portland's up right now against the Hornets, so it's kind of good and bad for us. Like the Blazers, we do need them to win, but we also need the Hornets to win. So I don't know, but I'll take Portland winning. They're at Detroit, at San Antonio without Wemby now, so that sucks, that whole situation. So I can easily see the Nets winning that game. At San Antonio, home versus the Warriors, at Charlotte, versus the Lakers, at the Cavs. Like, there are some tough games left. You have 2 games against Boston. You have 2 Mavericks games coming up. You have 3 against Atlanta, which might be big for the play-in standings. So the rest of the Nets schedule, it is kind of tough. The only pushovers are Washington. They have a game at Charlotte, but right now it's you have LaMelo back. You have Mark Williams still on that team, which that whole situation's funny. You're at Chicago. They're kind of on the Nets level, so you don't know how that's going to turn out, but it should be close. You have 2 versus Toronto, 1 at home versus New Orleans. But the rest of the teams they're playing, they're all pretty good teams. There's a lot of good teams on this schedule. OKC, 2 against Boston, 2 against Dallas, LA Clippers, the Knicks, the Timberwolves. I mean, there's still going to be losses on this schedule. Cleveland, the Lakers, Detroit's fine, OKC I think I mentioned already. So there are tough games left, but still, if for every game the Nets win, it's it just, those top picks keep getting further and further away with every win. And at this point, they're in such a deep hole in terms of tanking that they really need to go on a big losing streak. If they can somehow go 1-9 in their next 10 games, that's great. We're probably back to feeling happy, but I just don't think they're going to do that. I think at this point, this team's going to get better. D'Angelo Russell's going to be back. Cam Thomas will be back. So I do think that this Nets team will, as I said, probably end with over 30 wins, and it's frustrating, but it is what it is. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, all that, and I'll talk to you guys next time.